Hello everyone, it's David Tersiva here again, and this week I'm going to be speaking to you about noise reduction. And now those of you with Resolve Lite who know that you do not have noise reduction built into your program, don't worry, I'm going to talk about some alternatives you have, both in plugins and free things you can do within the program itself. But we're also going to examine noise as a overall look of exactly what is noise reduction, what's it doing, and how it affects your shot and good ways to get around it. We'll be looking at both the spatial and temporal internal resolve noise reduction, as well as neat video OFX. The video we're going to look at all this on is a music video that I did a couple of months back for a band called We're the Ocean. The song's great. It's called Good For You. You should check it out. It's a really great video. It's a single one-take video, which is really impressive. Shot by a good friend of mine, Jake Ures, and directed by Edward John Drake. Now, this video was shot on Dragon using the Highlight OLPF at 1600 ASA, and they shot using Van Diemen Lomo Round front anamorphics, which are pretty cool little lenses with Cook Speed Pancro rear elements. They ended up shooting wide open, and so they had a lot working against them. This is a single take, one-shot music video. It's about 4 minutes long, give or take, and is a real incredible work in terms of the choreography and the camera moves and the lighting transitions. So they had a lot of things working against them while they were making this. The video that we're seeing and that went out finally was the final take of this. And so as they were shooting throughout the day, they tried to hit magic hour, but each take, as time went on, got obviously darker and darker. And so they ended up having a bit of noise problem by the time they got to the end, but it's worth it because the final take is such energy and everything hit its marks perfectly. It's a really great video. But at first they were worried that things were too dark and there was too much noise, so we had to do a lot of stuff to sort of clean this up and make it usable. We're going to take a look at just one part of this video that I think really does a good job of showing noise and what you can do with it to help eliminate it. So this is a shot from the beginning of the video. So I've got this very complex node tree right here, and this is not what I use to grade the video. This is a sort of learning node tree I've set up to show you different things about noise so you can better understand it and your different options in terms of eliminating it. When we got this shot, it came in looking like this. Now, that may look unusable, and I'm actually not working off the raw R3Ds here. We had to ship this video out very quickly, and so the editor in LA had to send me overnights of the finished product, which was de-squeezed and compressed down to 1080p via DNX HD 220 megabit. And there's still a lot of latitude in the final footage, but as you bring that up, you reveal a lot of the noise that is still in the original R3Ds, but is exacerbated by our workflow. Fortunately, we have lots of tools at our disposal to get rid of that. So let's take a look at this. So real quick, just so you know, I have this first primary node here, which isn't doing anything except bringing the levels and the color up to where we used it for the final video. So for all intents and purposes, we can ignore this. Now, some people like to denoise before they do any primary corrections. I prefer to denoise after. That's partially a workflow thing. So you'll notice all denoise solutions tend to be taxing on your GPU and CPU depending on how your system is set up. You can do things like node caching and smart caching, which we may talk about at a later time, but it's easy to get caught up fiddling with noise reduction instead of focusing on getting the grade out and done quickly. So what I tend to do is make sure I've got all my primaries done, go through with my secondaries, and then as my very last pass, I'll go in and denoise the shots that really need it. So let's take a look at this. The first thing you want to do when you take a look at noise, if you're not in a hurry and just slapping something on top of it, is understanding what parts of the shot are actually noisy. So you can see here, and let me blow this up for you. So there's really two types of noise. There's chroma noise and there's luminoise. And luminoise tends to be a sort of even wash of noise across your image. Especially you'll see it a lot more in shadows than highlights. But what it is this sort of an even noise across everything. And sometimes it can be very pretty. For example, an Alexa at 1600 ASA is going to be not a tremendously clean image, but is going to have a pretty grain that feels sort of organic. And if you're lucky, you can get away without having to denoise it. Other cameras, you can run into something that you have a little bit more chroma noise. And so you can see in this face right here, we've got this really ugly noise. There's a lot of greens, there's a lot of reds. You can see over here, there's just a lot of stuff going on that is not pretty at all. And even in motion, which helps to get rid of noise, it's still really ugly stuff. But it's not all is not lost, so there's still a lot we can do here. And so what I've done first to better illustrate exactly what type of noise we have here is I've created a splitter combiner node, and this is not something you need to do typically when noise reducing, but I just want to show you what noise is so you have a better understanding. And you can do that right here with the splitter combiner node, Alt-Y on Windows, Command-Y on Mac. And what this does is it splits the image up into a red, green, and blue channel. And so let's take a look at this right now. So what I've done is shown only this red channel here, and you can see just how noisy the red channel is. His face back here, there's a lot of noise going on right here. If I switch over to the green channel, however, you'll see this is a lot cleaner image, and this is pretty typical for digital cameras. Pretty much across the board, but especially in cameras like the F65, they have a lot bigger and more present green photo sites because green is most important when encoding that digital data. So they tend to focus on making sure the green channel is as clean as possible. And that really reflects right here. You can see there is still noise present, especially considering how dark this image was when we started, but it's a lot cleaner than that red channel right here, which is just a mess. Going over to the blue channel, we can see it's somewhere between. It's definitely not as noisy as the red, but it is still much noisier than that clean green channel. And so that gives you a good idea, and this is actually a technique you can use later. So if you have a camera that, for whatever reason, has bad red photo sites and is really noisy, you can actually do a splitter node like this and apply your noise reductions solely to the red channel, which will make a big difference in cleaning up just the problem areas with noise while leaving the rest of your image detailed. The big thing about noise reduction is you want to do it as little as possible because it has the tendency to sort of smooth out your image, to lose a lot of the highlight details and luma details, which make your sort of entire image look soft and washed out. And in a worst case scenario, skin gets sort of plasticky and the whole thing feels just really digital. And there are things you can do to get rid of that, even if you don't have an option there, especially things like adding grain and different types of sharpening, which we'll cover in another video at a later time. But one of the great techniques for getting around that is focusing on just denoising the parts that need to be, whether that's certain luma areas or certain color channels. So, for example, if I were just to denoise this red channel, there would still be noise, as we can see in the blue channel, but a lot of the noise wouldn't be nearly as bad as what we're seeing with everything all combined. Similarly, I've created a layer node here with the luma and the chroma, and these are recombined using just the composite mode add. And luma channel, this node has all the saturation reduced, and the chroma channel has all the gain taken out. And again, we can take a look and see the noise isn't terrible in the luma. You can see there is noise here, and this is what I'm talking about with luma noise, where it's definitely present, but it's not sort of like just on his skin where we would see like with that red noise, or any particular area. It's sort of an even wash, and this noise itself isn't that ugly. It's not desirable exactly the way it is. The Dragon doesn't have particularly pretty noise like you'd find in some more filmic cameras, but it's still a great image. And this noise by itself, I would probably argue, especially on a tight deadline, that is present and we can move on and not worry about it. And let's take a look at the chroma noise. Now, you'll see that this is because it's such a dark image, we don't have much to work with. So let me turn up the gamma so we can see a little bit better. And you can see again, especially in his face, there's tons of chroma noise here. Back here, there's a lot of blue noise right in here. A little bit of green in his shirt. But you can very quickly see, especially in these shadows, that most of the noise problems we're going to be working with here are in the chroma noise. So let me go ahead and reset that, get out of here, and go back to our full view. And now we can focus on the actual noise reduction. So again, these nodes right here aren't actually for doing any stuff. I've just got them here to illustrate exactly what kind of noise reduction problems we're dealing with, and so give you a better understanding of what noise reduction is doing. Now, Resolve has two noise reductions built in, and this is only on the full licensed version of Resolve. So those of you with Blackmagic cameras, or those of you who have purchased the Resolve software, you have access to this. Those of you using the free Resolve Lite, which I guess actually the names have changed now with Resolve 12. So you have Resolve 12 as the free version and Resolve 12 Studio as the pay version. But regardless, these are the two noise options. You can get to them right here under this little star. And so we have spatial noise reduction and temporal noise reduction, and they work in two different ways, and you can use them by themselves, together, or whatever combination you find works best. And we'll go over some options with noise reduction that you can do in the future to sort of make things even better, similar to how we've done our splitter nodes up here. But first, let's just take a look at this spatial node that I've got already up here. So turn this on quickly. We've got a couple of options here: your radius, your blend, and your luma and chroma, which you can gang or ungang. And I've got them unganged right now. But let me go ahead and just reset everything. So this is what we're looking at right out of the box. There's nothing on, and we've got lots of noise. So let me just, without doing anything, just turn this up a little bit, and you can quickly see the noise on our image is disappearing. The noise is still there. I mean, you can see colors and stuff here, and it's maybe a little bit blocky, but it's a lot less than it was before. And we can turn it up even more. And you can see all the noise is gone, but we've replaced it with this ugly sort of blocking effect. So what the spatial noise reduction is doing is searching for areas of similar color and luma values and sort of blurring them together. And so what that does is it gets rid of all the individual noise specks, but we lose out on some stuff at the same time. We lose in particular edge sharpness, and we can get these artifacts where the noise reduction is thinking, like, for example, on his nose here, these are two distinct areas, and in an effort to preserve the edge detail, it's sort of created this harsh mask here, and that's what's causing this blocking. And so this is not a very pretty noise reduction. It works in a pinch, but this is not necessarily what we want to use. But let's talk about these options here and see how we can make this a little better. So the radius changes the search area that the algorithm uses in order to create different amounts of noise reduction. So let's turn this up to large here and zoom this back in. You can see a lot of the blocking is significantly improved. You can see there's almost a little bit of blending going on here. There's not that harsh edge. And while it's not perfect, it is significantly improved over the small radius. Now this comes at a little bit of an expense. The small search area allows your computer to run much faster because for every frame it's not having to search tons and tons of pixels just to make one pixel look correct. The larger you create your radius, the more time your CPU or your GPU has to spend searching through all these in order to optimize what areas get smoothed and what areas get left alone. And you'll find this in all noise reduction. There's a delicate balance between quality and render speed. And it helps to have the fastest GPU you can and making sure you have enough VRAM to deal with larger scenes, especially when we get to the temporal noise reduction, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Going back and thinking about, how we saw more noise here in the red channels than we did in the luma channels, we can also optimize which areas get more details affected. For example, if we were to just denoise in the luma channel, and let me turn my chroma noise off, you can see we've got lots of blurring, and so we've lost a lot of detail that the luma channel holds, and we still retain a lot of this noise. And if we do the opposite, you can see we've got this very even luma noise, which almost looks filmic, and taken away a lot of that ugly blocking color noise. So this is a lot better start already. So zooming in, we can even see that some of that strange blocking isn't happening here because a lot of that is affected from the luma noise reduction, because most of the detail in your image resides within the luma channel. And so you want to be very careful when increasing this luma threshold to do as little bit as possible. A deft touch here is definitely preferred. So I've turned the luma up a little bit and we started getting some blocking, but you can see this is not a bad start. If we threw some film grain on here, this would be a pretty good image, and I'd be pretty happy with that. Now, we've got this blend tool too, which is, for example, if you don't want to have to go back and regrain things, you can start increasing this, and it blends this image with the original image. So you get some of the original noise back, like you can see back here and over here, but it helps reduce some of the blockiness that is a big problem if you don't go back and regrain things. So that's spatial noise reduction. It's the fastest noise reduction you have, but it's also the least precise and can easily result in those blockings and those plastic looking skin. Okay, so let's take a look at temporal noise reduction over here. And now the way temporal noise reduction works is it compares frames next to the frames. So let's say this is our frame that we happen to be noise reducing at this time. And so we'll look at a couple frames before. So you can see, look at the noise right here in this car. As I click back, you can see the noise moves pretty dramatically. And as I go shot to shot, you can see the noise actually moves. And what temporal noise reduction does is it says, if I average enough of these frames, then the noise on this should move frame to frame, and it shouldn't be the same in any single frame. And by averaging these and combining them, we can figure out what this image was before all this noise was here. And it's a very clever trick, and it works exceptionally well in terms of getting rid of just noise while preserving our luma details. So things like his shirt here, his eyes, so things like his shirt here, or the specularity in his eyes. So let's take a look at this. Let's turn it on. And when you mess with temporal noise reduction, you've got an option, again, quite similar to the radius here, where 0 frames is off. 1 frame will search the frame before and the frame after whatever frame you're currently on. And 2 frames will do 2 frames before and 2 frames after. 2 frames before and 2 frames after gives you a much larger search area, and when you have especially bad noise like we have right here, should result in a lot cleaner noise reduction. So let's take a look. We've got the thresholds turned up extremely high right now with the full motion radius. So this is temporal noise reduction on as high as it goes. So let's take a look here. I've zoomed in pretty far. This is with it off and this is with it on. And you'll notice, wow, his face isn't really changing that much. And that's a big problem, and I'll point out why in just a moment. But let's take a look back here instead. You can see here the temporal noise reduction is making a huge difference, especially in these backs and these shadows. Let's look over in these trees right here. You can see off, on, off, on. There's a big difference in terms of that, but it's not affecting his face as much as we'd like. And here it is on, and that's still pretty unacceptable amount of noise. And if we go and look at our settings, you'll see I've already got the noise reduction turned up just about as high as it'll go. You know, motion radius large, motion estimation faster, better. It shouldn't matter much on a mostly static shot like this. So what's up? What's going on here? Why does this better noise reduction not looking better? And so turning off this noise reduction for a moment, let's take a look at how this chroma noise moves on his face. And you'll see this noise is actually fairly static. So shot to shot, there's still a lot of color going on in here. And this is because this sensor was pushed so far out of necessity in order to get this shot. Again, remember how dark it was as he walks into the light. It's a pretty great shot. And again, I highly recommend you check out this video. But when we had to push it up, we've revealed a lot of the noise that's just present in this sensor. Things like black balancing can help mitigate this some, but what this is doing is it's leaving this mostly static chroma noise shot to shot that's especially exacerbated in his face, which has lots of red. We boosted the saturation quite a bit in order to get that color back from the shadows, resulting in this really bad chroma noise. And so what we want to do in this scenario is, let me turn this temporal noise reduction back on. You can see it's especially affecting his hair here from the motion estimation, but let's go back to here and let's turn on this spatial noise reduction. But let's go back to it and turn the luma completely off. And so what we've got here now is this spatial noise reduction, reducing all this gross chroma noise. But spatial noise reduction is really bad with luma noise, and it does a really bad job about making things blocky. So I've turned off the luma completely, and we'll go back to our temporal noise here. And I'll blow this up and I'll turn it off and on. You can see it's taking care of the luma noise back here. And so we've sort of merged these two to have this pretty decent compromise where spatial is taking care of our gross chroma noise and the temporal is taking care of our luma without affecting the luma details, keeping our image still looking sharp. And so that's a great combination, and that's really how you should be using these in difficult scenarios. It's combining both these tools in order to get one great one. Let's turn them off for a second and talk about third-party solutions. Now, everybody knows Neat Video and is familiar with it. Now, Neat Video sells a OFX plugin, which runs within Resolve. It's a little bit more expensive than the regular version, but it's like $200 or something ridiculous, which is such a great value for the noise processing it offers. It's better than just about any solution on the market, outside of a couple high-end things that aren't available here, like dark energy or some of the proprietary things Nucoda makes. But let's take a look and turn this on, and you'll see a little bit of what I'm talking about in terms of the plasticness that this does. And this is utilizing both temporal and spatial noise reduction, but it's doing a much more aggressive job of it. It's left a lot of the details here, so you can see his hair still looks pretty good. Let me turn it off. It's not affecting it as much as the temporal noise reduction is. You can still see some of the details in his beard, some of the stuff in his jacket and shirt, but his skin has sort of gone fake looking. It's lost the pores and the detail, which might never have been there, but you know, it's definitely an issue. And so this is where you run into the issue with Neat Video, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Let me open this up. We'll take a look at what exactly we're doing. So here's what Neat Video is working with. This is Neat Video 4, the latest version. And that's a quick aside. Most people don't realize that they can do this, but you can go to Tools here, Preferences, Performance, and optimize your Neat Video settings. By default, I think it only runs on CPU and will run real slow. If you go here to optimize settings, you can whatever and hit start, and it'll run through all the options of different combinations of your GPU, combinations with your CPU, to figure out what's fastest for you, how many cores it should devote. You know, like if I use both my GPUs, I can get 17 frames per second. And this is a great way to speed this up because, again, noise reduction is processing intensive, and anything you can do to make it go faster is definitely appreciated. So let's take a look again at this, and you can see a lot of this information that I was showing you earlier here with these split nodes is available here. You can see how much high, low, medium detail noise there is. You can see where each channel is noisy. The green's apparently noisy down here in the shadows, and the red's noisier up in the top. And now using Neat Video is very simple. What you do is you just draw a box in an area that you want to analyze the noise. Now, you can't just draw this box anywhere, unfortunately. You have to be very careful where you do it. You want to focus on something that's very static in terms of its chroma and its luma. And this lets you make sure you're only analyzing noise and not different changes in terms of color or how bright something is. You also want to focus on getting something that has as little detail as possible. If I were, for example, to focus on this area here, which has a fairly even color and luma value, but it has fill with skin detail, which we'll lose if I run this. So looking at this image, I can see over here on this chunk that this area is pretty even. It's out of focus. There's not a whole lot of detail here. And so I can select this, just hit auto profile, run the fine tune on it, and zoom out and hit apply. And for the vast majority of things, you'll notice that this is all you need to do. Let me turn off this Open FX, open this up, and zoom out. That is a great out-of-the-box noise reduction. That took almost no time. We didn't have to fiddle with anything. There's still detail in his beard and his hair. His skin doesn't look great, but it's not horrible. And we can fix this easily with some grain, which I've got enabled over here. This is actually using the film convert engine, which has some really horrible looking LUTs in it, but is a great grain generator as long as you're not in an ASUS project. So you turn that on, and suddenly we've got this nice, even film looking grain without ugly chroma blotching. And we've come a really long way since our original shot. And so going back and turning that off real quick, we'll go talk about this again. Now, if you wanted to, for example, use just temporal or just spatial noise reduction, you can disable them or enable them here in the noise filter settings tab. And you can also do other things like reduce dust and scratches or get rid of some of the artifact removal that sometimes occurs with post-sharpening. And you can even add smoothing and sharpening here, as well as the same mixing tabs that we see down here. And you can adjust the quality. Temporal, you can actually do just ridiculous amounts of temporal reduction. For this project, for the sake of rendering, I've got it down to 1. But it's a tremendously powerful plugin and something I really recommend. One thing to note with it, though, is that if you're working on high resolution projects, 4K, 5K, 6K footage, especially footage that needs to be debayered, so you're dragging your epic, and you're working on a 4K or greater timeline, Neat Video and temporal noise reduction in general uses a lot of VRAM. So for every single frame the renderer is trying to create, it needs to render approximately, if you're on just a single radius, 3, or if you're on 2 or 5, up to 11 or 5 frames just for a single shot. And so it quickly adds up in your VRAM. And so if you have a card that, I've seen cards choke at 3 gig VRAM, 4 gig VRAM, which is why I've actually got a Titan in here specifically for this, so that the 12 gigs guarantees I don't run out. But I've seen Neat Video choke, especially Neat Video 4 on 4 gig cards. So just one thing to be aware of, you should be fine with 6 gigs on most projects. It is something to consider, and sometimes disabling temporal noise reduction and relying on just spatial is all you can do because of that VRAM issue. I can't recommend Neat Video enough. This works in both the regular version of Resolve as well as the licensed pay-for version. It's easily worth the $200 or so that it costs. And the devs are really responsive, and I don't have anything but nice things to say about the Neat Video team. Just be careful not to overdo it, and ensure that if you're using this and you want to avoid plastic-looking human skins, you need to add grain back over on top of your project in order to get the detail back. But we'll talk more about grain in an upcoming video, because that's a whole topic that can use plenty of time on its own. Now, I just want to go over this one more time and take a look at this other thing I've set up just to illustrate a couple more concepts that we've already discussed. So here I've got the same primary that we've already done before. And then I've got this splitter node again. So this is red, green, blue. And then this qualifier right here. And currently none of these are doing anything, but I wanted to show you a couple of options here. So say we wanted to just get rid of certain parts of the noise in this image. Like we know this red noise here is terrible and this blue noise down here is terrible. So what we can do is go down here and affect just this spatial noise reduction for just this section. Now you might be tempted to say, oh, I want to get rid of all this red noise here. Let me just jack up the chroma. And you'll see, oh no, nothing's happening. And that's because what we're dealing with here is just the single red channel, which actually has no chroma associated with it. It's just been stripped down to be just the luma component of that channel that's recombined. So chroma doesn't do anything because there is no chroma. But if we jack up the luma, you can see we've got this very noiseless, almost pixelated, this looks like one of those cheap Photoshop plugins, but the noise is gone. In the red channel. And if we go over to the blue channel, we do the same thing here. We turn this up, and we've got another like solarized, cheap looking thing. But if we turn it off, we can see we've got a pretty decent approximation in between. There's still green noise, especially down here in the shirt, but it's nothing bad. We can go back and say we want to take out just a little bit of that green noise. We can turn it up just a touch here. And while we are impacting our sharpness at this point, this is a way to handle like, oh, we need a lot more red reduction, or we need, not as much blue and then hardly any green. So you can get really fine tuning into here in order to preserve as much luma detail as possible without having to go into temporal noise reduction. So that's a great trick in terms of analyzing just certain parts of the image. Similar here, we've got this qualifier, and say we only want to affect, the shadows. So we've got real bad shadow noise. We can go in and go over to our qualifier here, and we can lower, this down, the luminance down, so that we're only affecting the shadows here, and even this out. So something like that. We can clean this up so it's not so messy. Maybe add a little blur to it. And now we can clean up, just the shadows. And so you can see back here, pulling this up, that this area is cleaned up, but our highlights are still great. And this isn't a good solution for this particular image, but if you have a camera that shoots lots of shadow noise but the highlights look beautiful, then this is a great technique in order to only affect the parts of the image that really need noise reduction. Again, with noise reduction, the key is to do it to only the parts that need it and do it as little as possible, so you're not impacting your sharpness and forcing yourself unnecessary render time. Similarly, you can apply the same effect to just specific colors, like if I want to just do his face here. And this isn't probably the best way to do this. I think you'd be better served probably working within the details here, the channel splitter. But it'll work in a pinch, and just to do something rough, and we can clean up just a face here and leave all this other noise. So that's a great technique in terms of just getting to the parts of the image that are necessary in order to clean up as best as you can. Now, for those of you without the full version of Resolve, which enable these spatial noise reduction and temporal noise reduction, and who can't or don't want to purchase Neat Video, there's a little bit of a trick we can do to get some noise reduction when we're in dire straits here, and I'm going to show you that real quick. And so this trick depends on the fact that most of the sharpness and detail in video is contained within the Luma channel. And the individual components of the color channel can be messed with without affecting the sharpness of the overall image too much. And so again, I've got this splitter combiner node here. I've got this extra node that's not doing anything. If you want to do this, again, it's right here. It's add splitter combiner node, Alt-Y, Command-Y on Mac, I believe. And it splits your image up into red, green, and blue, and combines them back again right here. And so you can go here and we can double look, or we can look and see, here's our bad noise in the red channel. Here's our minimal noise in the green channel, and here's our medium noise on the blue channel. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to our splitter channels here and go up to the red. And let me make it so we can see just what we're doing here. And I'm going to just click over to the blur panel and just blur the hell out of the red channel. And I'm going to go down the green channel or the blue channel and blur the hell out of that. Let's see what we've done. So here we are. We've got this, not great looking, but not noisy image here. We can compare it to what we had originally. And it's not nearly as sharp as our original image, but, it's the details there. It's usable. Maybe it looks a little bit glowy. But this is a great trick in order to get rid of noise if you don't have a noise reduction plugin and you desperately need to. Now you'll see we've got this green fringing everywhere. This is a part of the problem of pushing this stuff. So we can, sort of mess with these values here to try and push back some of that green fringing. So I've sort of shifted stuff up and down. That sort of slides our noise side to side. And you can play around with things to try and get around this. So let's say maybe we wanted to, switch this to node sizing here and zoom in a little bit on the green channel, just the tiniest little bit. Now we've got all this chromatic aberration. You can maybe we'll shift this up a little bit. No, that doesn't do it. What about zooming out there? So that's better than it was. You can see here again how we've reduced this noise. And again, this is definitely not the preferred way to do it. We've got this fringing on the side. We probably have to punch it on the whole thing now. But if you are in a pinch and you do not have any noise reduction plugins, by splitting all this stuff into separate channels, it's a great way to get around that. Alternatively, here, let me go ahead and reset this. Let me grab my primary correction from over here. So get this, go back over here, bring this down here, load up my primary. We can also do a similar thing with a layer node. Change this to add, lower the saturation on our top, lower the gain on our bottom. So this should be more or less the same image we were seeing before. We'll double check. Yep, it's the same. And doing the same exact thing down here in our chroma channel. And we can see again, and I'll temporarily turn this up so we can see what we're doing, but just blur that. And let me turn this back down, turn this off, and zoom in. And you know, we've got, here's what it was, here's what it is now. So it's a pretty passable noise correction in terms of getting rid of that chroma noise and leaving just the luma noise, while still preserving our details. Because again, the detail is carried here. You can see this is where, you know, the shirt and the hair and stuff. And this right here is just color instructions. So by just blurring part of the image, we can get a sort of selective noise reduction. And again, this is where we were, this is where we are now. And I don't know how much YouTube compression is going to make this look like garbage, but it is a big difference. And we've got some sort of desaturated fringing along the top and the edges, but this is a great way to get noise reduction in a pinch when you don't have any other tools. And that about does it in terms of noise reduction. We've covered what noise is, where we can see it, different types, luma and chroma, and then different types of noise reduction, both spatial, temporal, third-party plugins like Neat Video, and also different ways to apply noise reduction to only the parts of the image that need it. I hope you found this helpful. And I'll have some new tutorials coming out soon about things like grain and other things to help you make your noise reduction process a little bit easier. This is David Ures again, and thanks for watching.